everyone, and welcome to another live expert interview. My name is Lucy Challenger and I'm the CEO and founder of Polo Tweed. And I am joined today by the wonderful Pietro Tomajer, who is a very dear friend, but also an expert in the industry he works in. Now, Pietro, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Lucy. Nice to see you, and thanks for having me.
No, you're very welcome, Pietro. So, Pietro, you're the founder and co-owner of the limited edition. And it would be really helpful if you could just bring everyone up to speed who's tuned in today. You know, what is it that you and your company does?
So the limited edition was born from a vision, which was born from a passion. One of those passions that you are also familiar with, I think, Lucy, you know, together with bikes, guitars, and especially the boys can have this amazing passion for mechanics. And we decided to explore more the world of mechanics related to watchmaking because checking out the high street in the last few years, the market has got very concentrated and very focused on what we would call the institutional brands, which are present in the four corners of the earth, and they are in every retailer, in every capital city in the world. However, there is this big horizontal development of those watch brands, but there's no more vertical development into finding the niche brands in the watch industry, which are the brands people that have this passion for mechanics are really, really into. So we decided with the limited edition to focus on those brands, give them visibility, and hopefully help them to sell online through our platform.
Okay, amazing. So how did you even get into this? Because, you know, I like watches, my husband likes watches, we like nice things, but, you know, what took you into this world to begin with?
Yeah, it was as it often happens, it was completely by chance, if you like. I remember being hired by Richmond Group. Richmond is the second biggest luxury conglomerate in the world, so they have brands like Cartier, Jaeger-LeCoultre, IWC, Panerai, and they hired me simply because in those days, 20 years ago, in Milan, I was one of the few that could speak different languages. So I just got into it for, like that, by chance. And in that case, because of my French. So it was, I discovered the world. I did have a passion for watches before, like it happens to all the boys. And girls very often. At one point in your life, when you go through your school achievements, you will receive that mechanical device that you, it doesn't matter how passionate you become about it, but surely it will always kind of mean something very strong. It has this kind of affective value and the legacy that goes with it that makes it the perfect present when parents want to mark a moment in particular. It's parents in the first instance, but then of course it can then be applied for the rest of their life. So my dad, I remember when my dad had a bit of money, was doing well in his business, and I was kind of graduating from high school. So this magic present came, and it kind of triggered my curiosity. Although at that point, little did I know about what was going to happen later on. And I have to be honest, then when Richmond called me up, then I was immersed in this world of mechanical wonders, and I developed a real passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is that sort of homage that you hear a lot about fathers gifting their children, their sons, their daughters with a watch, with a timepiece, and it sort of correlates with memory, doesn't it? And you know, a watch is keeping the time, but it also marks special occasions and memories, and quite sort of a profound emotional connection with the piece. But you know, for people who are listening that perhaps don't know much about the watch industry, you know, they might have seen the Rolex or the Cartier advert and thought, okay, it's just another watch. Obviously you have the high street brands, and then you have the luxury watch market. So what's the difference, and why are luxury watches so different and so special?
Yeah, so within the established brands, what we would call the institutional brands, sometimes we call them the industrial brands, but it's a bit unfair because some of them are everything but industrial. They just belong to a big group. brands like Panerai, or I could mention, Van Cleef, I could mention Piaget. They are beautiful products. They are beautifully made. They are, by all extents, luxury. They can be defined as luxury, 100%. But the thing is, they leverage their development on aspirational values that are built on marketing mainly. So the product, yes, is amazing and it has to be amazing, but they're looking for globalizing a message that can be understood in the four corners of the world, and it can be into fruition to everybody can afford that kind of product worldwide. For the independent watch brands, which also can be at any level of luxury, so it could be entry level, £1,000 up to any extent, millions. The conception is slightly different, because the reason of being for these brands and contemporary watchmakers is expressing their art of making. Is not to develop a brand as such. Is really to pass on their artisanal skill, their vision, and trying to leave a mark on the times they are living with what they are doing. So is more like the art market in that sense, like the art industry.
Okay, so buying a luxury watch is like buying a piece of art.
I totally believe that it is. I'm a rich guy, so I don't dislike, brands that are big parts of a big groups, but I know the dynamics behind. The dynamics behind are to develop the brand and to create value for shareholders. We deal with watchmakers that they are doing their own mechanical art today. Some of them are not even making much money out of it, but they are very keen on being recognized, transmitting a message, expressing what they have inside. And they give this magical thing of, they give you the opportunity to access to their art as it's happening now. Like if, Picasso was alive now and you could order one of his pieces of art. So it's these two things. So they are very different. One is a product, if you like. The other one is an art piece. But this doesn't mean that one is necessarily superior to the other one. It's just two different storytelling.
Yeah, and absolutely. And like with art or with any personal purchase, taste and what you like and don't like and how it looks plays a big part of that. So just because something is worth a lot of money, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to like what it looks like. As with cars or houses or, whatever you buy, you have to have that emotional connection with it. So with my limited understanding of the watch market, I know that my husband many years ago wanted to get a Daytona, a Rolex Daytona. And he then embarked on this journey of trying to buy this watch. And what I found fascinating about it, because I knew nothing about this world, was that there's obviously a limited supply of these pieces on the market because, like you say, they are crafted, they are made beautifully, handmade, etc. And then there's also obviously a large second-hand market of people selling and moving on pieces which perhaps are vintage or one of a kind, etc. So if people are listening to this and thinking, I'd really love to buy a luxury watch or really like to start getting it into this industry and finding something for myself, what would be your advice or your top tips to give to people who are looking to buy either a new or a second-hand luxury watch?
Yeah, so it's a complex question. I'll try to keep it nice and short, but okay, brands like Rolex are the access to the beauty of investing a lot of money into something that is completely anachronistic, because a mechanical watch, is not as accurate as a smartwatch, and is, is not a jewel necessarily, so it doesn't necessarily give you the value related to the precious material, but the beauty is all in the complexity of the mechanics. So it's something intellectually more difficult to process. So for people to accept that, yeah, you can spend a lot of money on something like that, it's already a big step on its own. Rolex has opened this big time because Rolex has given, together with that, has given the status. So Rolex as a brand is such a powerful message is embedded with the brand that you are reassured to spend that amount of money on a timepiece, because Rolex gives you that reassurance related to the status, one of the most powerful brands in the world. So a school case for all of us. I always kind of say there is Rolex and then there is the watch industry, because the success they had goes beyond the category they're in. It's a bit like, I don't know if you're watching the Michael Jordan documentary these days. As an example,
he's very passionate about Michael Jordan.
yeah, as an example, The Last Dance, an example of somebody that transcended the category he was in. Yeah. Basketball, it was an excuse for him to communicate and to achieve something much bigger than just basketball. Rolex is that. So because of that, then people start to get intrigued, so, but why can't I see a movement behind a Rolex watch? Why Rolex is not doing these other things that other brands are doing? So let me dig, let me investigate. And then you find a whole world of different ways of expressing the same kind of art. And it's a bit like going from figurative to contemporary abstract art, if you like, because it goes all over. There are watches that have been launched successfully that don't even tell the time, Lucy, which is unbelievable. But it goes back to that idea of transcendence. So you buy a watch these days, a mechanical watch, not to tell the time, not to read the time, but because of the inner value that it's bringing with it. So in terms of the second part of your question, new and second hand, it's all about the knowledge of the market. So people say mechanical timepieces keep their value very well, or they increase in value, or they lose value. None of these statements is correct, because it depends on not only on the brand, it depends on the model, it depends on the historical time that piece has been released, it depends on the story attached to that piece. There's a famous example of we're talking about the Daytona, so the Rolex Paul Newman, that's been recently sold for $18 million, doesn't even get close to that money in terms of its inner value. So it's not the product, it's the story. So because of what we said at the beginning, the stories attached to the timepieces, there is a very immaterial way of being able to determine value related to timepieces. That's where we try to help by guiding customers, depending on what they like, how they see their collection developing, because you can't collect everything. There are too many brands, too many models. So we say, yeah, if you're interested in this, that particular timepiece is relevant because of this story, this historical situation, and because we expect it to gain value, or I don't know, stay at the same value, or not lose too much. And we guide people throughout that process, basically. But we encourage people to buy for the fun and for the pleasure of buying, because there are so many other ways of investing money if the intention is to make money than watches, to be fair.
Yeah, no, you make a very fair point, and I know my husband would buy a watch every week if I let him, but he's not going to be buying a watch every week. But obviously and you talk about collections of watches, and the connoisseurs and the watch collectors will buy watches to have some form of investment of their money, as well as you say, a passion and the love of the art of the creation. But so some watches, like you've mentioned one that sold for 18 million, must go up in value. They do become an asset.
No, big time. I mean, the example you gave of a Rolex Daytona is from the 80s, that Rolex has decided to produce far less than the demand on the market, and they've managed to create this unbelievable aspirational cloud around the Daytona, because getting a Daytona is not something that everyone can. And in the world we live, for what we are passionate about, we're always looking for the rarer things. Now, Rolex is not a rare item per se, but there are some models that are really difficult to get, because Rolex are getting very picky on choosing their customers. They wouldn't let everyone have it. So that's one way of keeping things exclusive. The other way, which is actually reducing the industrial capacity of producing watches, because Rolex makes 1 million watches a year. So we're talking about a massive machine. Yeah. The independent contemporary watchmakers we work with is human beings that produce with their hands sometimes not more than 10 pieces, 15 pieces a year. So the scarcity is related to the fact that that particular timepiece can't exist unless this guy, takes a year to manufacture it. Famous examples, to give a British example, genius Roger Smith. Roger Smith is the only British watchmaker making 100% his watches in the UK. The UK used to be where watchmaking started, but has completely disappeared. And now on the back of the master, George Daniels, Roger Smith is perpetuating this tradition. But he can produce those kind of numbers. So the scarcity and the aspiration is not related to a manager making a decision behind a table in a big corporation. It's related to the fact that that beautiful piece would not exist unless it's created by the master. Yeah. And this is where we specialize in particular. But yeah, to come back to your question, yeah, that scarcity creates value, because scarcity creates a lot of people like your husband, myself, looking for some pieces that we can't get. So we are sometimes happy to pay a premium even above the retail price. But there are some famous examples. The Daytona is now on the market easily. We're talking 50% over his retail value if you want to get one, and from the secondary market, because if you go in a Rolex boutique now, you can't even be on the waiting list to get it unless they know you, unless you have bought several watches from them. So it's an industry that works like that.
Very, very. I mean, it's similar to how Ferrari operates, in the sense that you can't buy certain Ferrari models unless you've bought previous Ferrari models from them. So you have to build that relationship up with this incredible brand that's like Rolex is so unique. So, but going back to your wealth of experience and knowledge in this industry, you've obviously traveled the world, and you seek out these unique pieces, and you must have seen and witnessed the most incredible artwork of watches, but also had phenomenal experiences in your journeys. Could you think of any, I know it might be a hard question to ask, but any funny or unusual stories that you've experienced in your life working with these incredible timepieces?
Yeah, so there is, as I said, so now the watch industry is 95% concentrated in Switzerland, if we're talking about the high-end quality, besides smart watches and all of that. What we have seen recently, along with the British watchmaker I just mentioned before, Roger Smith, is a resurgence of some other countries in the field of watchmaking. So one of the most incredible things is when I started the limited edition in 2015, somebody pointed me to this very obscure watchmaker called Konstantin Chaikin, Russian watchmaker, the only Russian watchmaker of modern, contemporary days. And he had just launched this watch called the Joker. And the Joker is a watch that is technically the face of a joker telling you the time. So the most abstract kind of way of telling the time. And so in 2015, when I was envisaging, to set up the limited edition, I was looking for ways to make it as well sustainable financially and all of that. And so I traveled to Russia, I met with a guy, and it was an incredible experience. I felt like I was in a completely different world. And soon, because of the demand we had on the Joker, we realized that the Joker was going to be a big lever for us to propel not only ourselves, but our reputation of being the expert for finding crazy things. So the two things have started together and have developed together. And I found myself in Russia, in this obscure district of Moscow, developing something with somebody I didn't even have the knowledge before he existed, in the thing that has been the most important in my life so far in terms of business ventures. So that was an adventure. Yeah, there are a few more related to the rest of my career. I've traveled, I think, all the countries in several continents, and one of them is the Middle East, where we went everywhere. And I've traveled to countries like Yemen, Pakistan, Iran, and I've seen that this passion we were talking about before, Lucy, it's really, it transcends every border and every country. It's just an emotional attachment to something that is still perceived as even if it's slightly anachronistic, as we said, still perceived as, how can I say, a very, very rich product, rich of passion, rich of history, and rich of stories related to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, that's it. I mean, time links us all, doesn't it? You know, you may be in different cultures and you may speak different languages, but we all typically work with the same time, so it sort of connects us all as human beings around the world, and then in turn the watch represents that connection. So it's quite.
You're right, and it's not just the accuracy. I mean, it's not time as fruition of time only, because otherwise we will all use smartwatches, but it's actually the infinite ways to tell the time, which you would think there is only one, but no, actually these watchmakers are toying with the ways of how we can tell the time in a different way, which is fascinating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think in my industry, you know, I work in the world of hospitality and private staff, and a lot of, you know, the clients that I work with own collections of their own, and the staff going into these homes are expected to, you know, take inventory of watches, look after them, clean them, care for them, etc. You know, why do you think, even on a sort of an amateur level, it's important for hospitality, domestic staff to know about watches? You know, why should us mere mortals know about watches? How can it help us in our sort of day-to-day life?
Because I think it's very straightforward. It relates to the personal sphere of human beings. Because watches, again, they are not functional. You don't need a watch to, you know, to go faster than anyone else, to be smarter, or to be, you know, or to gain a competitive advantage to other people. You do it because you have a craving inside yourself. You need to dig into that crazy technology that is all concentrated in few inches on your wrist, which is trying to master the how can I say, the most unexplicable of mysteries, which is time. So if somebody is into mechanical watchmaking, I can guarantee you normally is a very interesting person, and it's somebody you can have a conversation for however long, because it touches a passion more than anything else.
Right.
It's the problem I have with cars, for example. Most of my collectors, friends and aficionados and passionate about watchmaking, they love cars as well, for the same kind of love for mechanics. And my knowledge of cars is not at all, you know, as good as it should be. But I totally get why people are so into cars.
About it. No, absolutely. And I think that passion and that understanding, I mean, with the e-learning and the training that we offer, we don't teach about the detail of watches like you do, and, you know, we don't source watches. They go to experts like yourself to do that. But understanding that this timepiece is an emotional connection for the person that owns it, and if you damage it, or you don't clean it, or you don't care for it how they want it to be cared for, you could destroy an emotional relationship between, you know, and people are so emotionally invested. But why do you think, you know, obviously now we are in this bizarre pandemic and lockdown in the UK and around the world as well, but when this lifts, you know, people can access the internet, they can access digital databases, they can educate themselves. And I think training now has become so accessible to people around the world. You know, what are your thoughts on learning, even as an amateur, about watches and you know, this amazing world?
I think, Lucy, in that respect, you are spot on. I mean, the power of learning is key to be able to enjoy the nice things in life. You were mentioning about the nice things in life before. The nice things, why are they nice? They're normally nice not because of how much they cost or even how rare they are, but because of the story that is behind, and because they are a conversation starter on the fact that you can collect anything that is artisanal and you'll have a story to tell me about why that piece that doesn't say anything to me because I don't have that knowledge is relevant, important, and can transmit emotion. So if I don't have that kind of basic knowledge myself, that can come obviously through training and through somebody explaining me, then it's equal to not being able to access the information, and that's really that's a shame. As you know, my wife is into art and very much, and she's a real artist. She says art doesn't need an explanation. You know, you need to stare in front of an art piece and see what it does to you. I agree with that, but to a certain point, because we all work differently. Without a bit of training, myself, I don't have that platform inside myself, experience, to totally be able to understand it and then to love it as much as I would do when I actually get why certain things have been done.
Yeah.
It's like in watchmaking and in art, when abstract is explained to you as a way of differentiate yourself from all of those that were doing landscapes until yesterday, then all of a sudden you get it. Oh yes, that's why then this picture is crazy. That's why that watch is crazy, because you go on the high street and they all look the same, or you know, there is a lot looking like the same. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And your wealth of knowledge and your love of art, your wife's love of art, that shapes your industry, your expertism. You know, you wouldn't have that knowledge if you hadn't had the journey and, you know, the world and the training and all that understanding. You wouldn't be able to advise your clients. You wouldn't be able to give them the very best, because you hadn't invested in your own knowledge and your own appreciation of it.
You're completely right. You're completely right. Because also to enjoy is good enough to stare at something, but people like yourself or myself that can make people understand why then that thing is so expensive or it's valuable or it can gain value, then there is a need of organizing the informations so then you can make educated decisions on what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pietro, this subject's so fascinating, and I could literally talk about this with you all day long. But for those listening who want to get in touch with you for you know, your expertise with when it comes to watches and sourcing them and all the other aspects you discussed, you can do. They can find you on Instagram, which is thelimitededition.uk. And they can also go to your website to contact you, which is thelimitededition.co.uk. And hopefully everyone that's been listening, you know, has found this a brief but really quite important insight into this rather magical world that is watches.
Yes, completely. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. We could do this every week, and there would be something new to talk about. And what you're doing is really amazing, because the world is changing dramatically, and the amount of information bouncing, you know, to us is enormous. Yeah. And I am a believer as well that we need to organize the information to be able to understand it properly. So it's been a pleasure, Lucy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pietro, for joining me, and wishing you a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you, and you. Bye-bye.